Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Jesse Lee podcast. Sorry, there's a bit of a lag there between the last episode and this one. Been a lot going on. I needed a little bit of a spiritual break and reboot, which I got, and I think it helped a lot. And, yeah. So I'm back, and it is October 30th. The day before Halloween, and it's probably going to be a pretty uneventful Halloween. Although, to be honest, I don't even know if parents, let their kids trick or treat anymore even before COVID happened, because I never see any kids anymore, hardly at all. Going up and down the street, it's weird, but, it's a moment. I loved going trick or treating when I was a kid. Jesus. I was that and Christmas were pretty much the two best holidays of the year, I would say. For kids, and, being into monsters and horror movies, of course, Halloween was always a big fave of mine. Going to haunted houses and whatnot. And, yeah, so we are also... Jesus, for a long 5 days until we find out who our new president is. Goddamn, I hope it isn't Donald Trump. And it's looking like it won't be, although God knows what can happen and what could happen, and maybe it will happen. One never knows these days. But we will see. Like I said, get out there and vote. Even if there's long lines, at least go check, try, fuck. Gotta vote, gotta try to do something. If nothing else, get a better Senate going. Anyway, I wanted to this time around, while I'm in between guests, talk about television, because I've done movies a fair amount and music a fair amount, but haven't really focused on TV yet, and TV has definitely been going through a renaissance, especially the last 15 years, although, started back in the day. I'm going to mention some of the earlier shows that were precursors and influence the later shows. And I'm definitely going to focus on dramas, but also science fiction, fantasy, horror, not so many comedies, but a few I'm throwing in that I think were extra important and great. Besides the obvious ones, I don't think I need to talk about Cheers or the Cosby Show or anything like that. So, yeah, let's get going. I think that probably when it comes to science fiction, fantasy, and horror, the first show that really mattered was The Twilight Zone, with Rod Serling writing a lot of it, and also a lot of the episodes were written by Richard Matheson, who's an amazing novelist and short story writer. You should check out a lot of his books if you haven't. I Am Legend, which is kind of considered one of the best horror novels ever written. It was a huge influence on Stephen King. And so yeah, The Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents all came out around the same time. And they were definitely altering what type of stuff you could see on TV. There wasn't a lot of, horror, thriller, science fiction stuff at all. It was mainly just westerns and dramas before that, and comedies, and then of course Star Trek in the late 60s, and After that, a show that I think really was ahead of its time, it was on BBC. It was called The Prisoner. And it starred this guy named Patrick McGowan. He plays this agent that works for some faceless British intelligence agency, and the show starts out with this really iconic intro where he like walks into the office of the underground secret service place, and he's mad and he slams his fist down on the table when he hands him his retirement paper and is like, I'm quitting paper. And they're like, okay, whatever. And then he goes home, and then someone puts a bunch of gas into his house and he passes out. And then that's the intro of every episode, just to like tell you what's going on. And then he wakes up in this town that's like in the middle of nowhere, and it's like this weird little town where all these people live, but it's like removed from the outside world. And you can't escape, and if you try to escape, this giant bouncing ball attacks you and kills you. And the whole show was just so weird and like trippy and ahead of its time, and it was one of the first shows to really like just not answer everybody's questions right away, and it has a finale that it has to be seen to be believed, and it's just one of the most weirdest acid influenced episodes of any show ever. It only has about 13 episodes, I think. But definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. A lot of the shows I'm going to mention are going to be more shows that most people probably haven't learned as much. But I still wanted to list some of the big ones that are kind of important. That just changed the way TV went. And then besides the early anthology shows, there were a bunch of other ones in the 70s and early 80s that were horror centered, less science fiction, and Night Gallery, which was Rod Serling's sequel to The Twilight Zone, is amazing as well. It has one of the first, it might have been the first thing that Steven Spielberg ever directed, was an episode he directed on there in the 70s, but the whole show was great, really creepy and weird and just good. It's just kind of like a more horror-centered version of The Twilight Zone. And then there was Tales from the Dark Side, which was a great show and very scary. It was produced by George Romero and written by him and a bunch of other people. The guy that did the music for Creep Show, John Harrison, he wrote some episodes for it. It was a really good show, really creepy and weird, and good stuff. And then they made a movie of it later on in the 90s that was pretty good. And then there was Lady Bradbury Fever, which was one of the very first shows HBO ever did. That was another anthology show that was great. And then there was the reboot of The Twilight Zone in 1985. And that went for 2 seasons, maybe 3, and had a lot of good stuff on it. One of the previous episodes I remember on that was called Grandma, and it was based on a short story by Stephen King. And I think Harlan Ellison wrote the screenplay. It's about a kid who's like taking care of his grandma, and she dies, but then he finds out she's like a monster. Basically, she was a witch before she died, and it was very scary, the short story and the episode. But all of this stuff, like everything I'm gonna mention, I would recommend checking out because these are all shows that changed the way I looked at TV and definitely changed TV in general. And if you're into sci-fi and horror especially, you can't go wrong with any of this stuff. Then there was Amazing Stories, came out the same year as that, which was Steven Spielberg's anthology show. That went for 2 seasons, I think, and that was great. It had a really big budget because it was Spielberg. And there were some really cool stories on there that kind of like went all over the place, from fantasy to sci-fi to horror to comedy and drama. But they were all pretty trippy. And then that got rebooted just last year on the new Apple TV streaming platform. But honestly, it was pretty disappointing compared to the old one. I don't know why it shouldn't have been, but it was, unfortunately. And then also around the same time, a couple of years later, Tales from the Crypt started. It went for a few seasons on HBO, so it was a little darker and more graphic in tone on there, but then it switched to Fox, I believe, for like the second half, which is interesting. It's kind of weird. That doesn't happen a lot, but everybody remembers the Clint Keeper and Boys and Girls and all his stupid puns. It was pretty great. It was a cool puppet. I love that intro with the like dum 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 Danny Elfman in the theme song. I think it was really cool. And yeah, that was more towards the end of the 80s, but I just wanted to kind of list off the 80s anthology shows. The shows that changed TV in the 80s the most were some of the dramas, like Hill Street Blues. If you haven't seen that, it's pretty awesome. It was like the first top show that really seemed kind of real and kind of had like almost bad words, not quite, not actual bad words, but like street slang, and dealt with heavier subjects. And that Miami Vice, I would say, one of the two shows that really changed like drama on TV. And then ER after that as well. And even though it's like a hospital show, I loved it. I thought it was pretty great for the time. I mean, it's definitely a soap, but it's good. And George Clooney and Anthony Edwards are both really good on it in particular. And Dr. Romano, God, what an asshole. So good. And, then you had shows in the late 80s, early 90s. The Wonder Years, of course, was great, kind of comedy drama. And a show I think that gets kind of missed a lot, that I think it was one of the quirkiest, kind of just had the weirdest characters and went in odd directions, was Northern Exposure. And that was on CBS in the late 80s, early 90s. And, a lot of these shows are on streaming services, but a lot of them aren't. If you know how to use torrent sites, you can always find stuff there. Most of the stuff I'm going to mention, especially like the newer stuff, is all streaming, but, it depends if you're paying for the late service and all that. But, if you know how to do it, you can find almost anything online. Not that I would endorse illegal behavior, mind you. But, yeah. After that, there were like some shows There was a show that was on for like, I think only maybe half a season called Erie, Indiana, and I think it was on Fox, and it was kind of a monster horror show aimed at kids, but it was really weird. Oh, another late 80s anthology show I forgot about that's really good is just called Monsters. That had a lot of really cool episodes of weird shit on it. Really kind of creepy and scary at times. But yeah, and then, in the early 90s, late 80s, the X-Files came out. That was obviously a huge game changer. Probably, in some ways, mysterious show up to that point, because even though the anthologies were like straight up horror, and X-Files was more science fiction with monsters here and there, it was still just kind of like filmed and presented more like a horror movie than any show had been up to that point, I think. And of course the whole one storyline with the aliens and the clones and everything is great. And David Duchovny and Julian Anderson are amazing. I'm sure most of the people watching this or listening to this have watched it, but if you haven't, do yourself a favor and watch the new ones too. The ones they did in the last couple of few years are really good too. And really like timely in dealing with a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. Great show. And, then you had Star Trek, The Next Generation, of course. A show I really liked that was on Fox for only a couple years. It was a spin-off of a movie that was Alien Nation. And, it was really odd and cool, and the cool thing about it was really about like racism and otherness, but it used aliens as a metaphor for that were trying to fit in mainstream society, and most people hated them and discriminated against them, even though most of them were just like trying to have families and be chill. Really good show. Too short-lived, but really good. And, NYPD Blue and The West Wing came out around then. Really good dramas. And then, probably since The Prisoner, the weirdest show to ever be on TV, it came out in around 89. Fucking Twin Peaks by David Lynch. And, again, I'm sure most people have seen it that are listening to me, but you never know. If you haven't seen it, go out and watch it ASAP, because it's amazing. And, a lot of people think it went downhill after the whole Laura Palmer mystery was solved. And it did to a degree, because David Lynch really didn't have a lot to do with it at that point. It was mostly Mark Frost, but I like Mark Frost's ideas, and he wrote some really cool stuff too, and they both wrote all of the new Twin Peaks, which was on Showtime 4 years ago. And that show the new one is incredible as well. It's even weirder and darker and more fucked up than the original one because it's on Showtime. So David Lynch could do whatever the fuck he wanted, obviously. God, I really hope I get to interview David Lynch someday. I know the guy loves weird disabled people, so I think I have a shot. But anyway, man, that show was amazing, and watch the whole thing. Because more than anything, what Twin Peaks did was it even though it was on ABC, which was kind of amazing, that which decided to do it there instead of doing it like on Showtime or HBO. It still changed the way shows went, and it changed like TV in general, and influenced the types of things that HBO and Showtime started doing later on. Um, well, really around the same time, because that was not too long before The Sopranos and 6 Feet Under and a show called Oz. I think Oz actually even came out before The Sopranos and 6 Feet Under. Um, Most people have seen The Sopranos. If you haven't, watch it. It's insane and amazing. Up there with The Godfather and Goodfellas in terms of the best gangster stuff ever done. And it's unique because it's the whole, like, let's put gangsters in suburbia idea. And it's really cool. I've actually been rewatching it just recently, and it's awesome. And then 6 Feet Under, if you haven't seen that, it's awesome. It's, in my opinion, one of the best dramas ever done on TV. If not the best drama ever done on TV. It's about a family that are undertakers, and there's starts out with someone dying every episode, and the first episode is the dad that runs the mortuary dies in the first episode, and it's how his death affects the family, and it's incredible. It really is all about the idea of living life to its fullest, because we can die anytime, and that is very true. And check it out if you haven't. The acting on it in particular is amazing, and I love the guy that plays Nate, Peter Krause. He went on to be on Parenthood, and David, the brother, is played by the guy that ended up on Dexter, and that's another great Showtime show that came out a little later, but check Dexter out if you haven't either. It's like semi-horror thriller. It's about a serial killer that only kills bad people. He has to kill someone, so he goes after, like, other serial killers and murderers and rapists and stuff. And Oz is also really good. It was on for a while, like 6 or 7 seasons. It's all about this crazy high-tech prison that does all these weird experiments about how to, like, control prisoners, and it's really good and intense and dark, and yeah, it's awesome. Right around that time, we had shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which, in my opinion, is one of the best shows ever made. I mean, the thing is, like, Joss Whedon went on to do the first 2 Avengers movies and a bunch of other shit. Created it. It was his first show, and the thing about it that makes it amazing is the writing. The actors and the characters are great too. Don't get me wrong, the storylines are great. They're really, like, unique, and they did a lot of, like, episodes where they would do things like, what would happen if a spell got cast that changed everybody and made them behave totally differently? And but Joss Whedon had a group of writers that he used that were amazing, and they went on to do the spin-off show Angel, which, in my opinion, is just as good, if not better even, in some ways as Buffy, and then they also, the same team of writers, went on to do the show Firefly, which was unfortunately canceled after 6 episodes, but it was amazing. It might have been more like 8, but they're all great, and they're worth watching because it's basically the only space western ever put on TV. Until The Mandalorian, but at the time, it was very ahead of its time. It was definitely like half western and half science fiction show. The characters in it were all very likable and great. That was the thing about Buffy and Angel. They were all very likable characters, and it was like a group of 5 or 6 that were on every episode, and you grew to like them a lot. The thing about Angel was the first season didn't have a lot of the cool characters that came into it in the second and third season. It took like 3 seasons, but then you had like the gang, just like on Buffy, that was so likable. And all those shows are amazing. And then after Firefly, they did a show called Dollhouse, which was also great. It was a really cool idea. It was about this secret agency company that basically took people, men and women, that were having like a hard life. They were gonna go to prison. They were drug addicts, like whatever, different things. And if they wanted, they could get hired by this company to dedicate a certain amount of time to the company, like 2 or 3 years, where they would basically have their memories wiped entirely, but then put on a disc so that they could get their memories back after they did their time for the company. But while they were working for the company, rich people would basically hire out either the women or the guys, depending on what they were looking for, to have as any type of person that they wanted. So they would have like the personality built for them, and it could be like someone they wanted to have sex with, or someone they wanted to have do an assassination, or someone they wanted to go on a road trip with, or like whatever, anything they wanted, and they called them dolls. And it started out just sort of about that whole idea, and then by the second season it went into this whole like Armageddon dystopian kind of thing in the future that goes down because of that. And it's really cool, a really cool show. And the girl that was on Buffy that played Faith, Eliza Dushku, was the main girl in it, and I think she's one of the hottest chicks on the planet. And I love you, Eliza. Come on my show, please. And yeah, it's cool. So around that time, we also had 24 on Fox. Not like the greatest show ever made, but the whole idea of every episode being in real time was really cool. And, it's entertaining, and it's a good, like, spy action show. One of the only, like, spy action shows of that time, except for Alias, which was J.J. Abrams' first TV show. Actually, his second, Felicity, was his first. But Alias is a lot more up my alley, and really good, and really well acted, and has like a lot of really good twists and turns in it. And I would recommend checking that out. There was another show that was on Fox for only one season that was made by Brian Fuller, who went on to do a couple other shows that I'm going to mention in a bit. It's called Wonder Falls, and it only had about 8 episodes, but it was great and amazing. And there was another show around that time called Sliders that was really good, and also on Fox. Sliders. Well, first I want to tell you about Wonder Falls, because it was really quick. It was about this girl who worked in a gift shop at Niagara Falls. And every episode, one of the items in the gift shop would start talking to her. And she would have to, like, solve a mystery or, like, help someone based on the object. Really weird idea, but it was really cool and well done. Sliders was a sci-fi show that I think only lasted a few seasons, but the cool thing about it was about these group of people that would go into a different dimension every show. I think they were trying to get back to their original dimension, but they couldn't. They were like jumping dimensions. So every episode would be like a different old kind of vibe and trip, which was really cool. But it got canceled fairly quick. Honestly, it wasn't the greatest show. The acting was a little meh, but it was a cool idea, so that's why I'm mentioning it. I liked it enough for the idea at the time. Right around this time, the FX network came out, and they really did some amazing shows that changed TV. They were very edgy, they were very dark, and they influenced the stuff that HBO and Showtime would do further down the line, I would say. One of them was Nip Tuck, which was kind of a soap opera about 2 plastic surgeons that had a business that were best friends. It was the first show created by Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk, who went on to do a bunch of other shows that I will mention some of as well. But it was a great soap opera. But I thought it was really entertaining, and it was really dark and fucked up, and dealt with like transgender stuff way ahead of its time, and other weird, just unusual things for the time, and it's really entertaining, and lots of twists and turns, and it's one of my favorite shows by them that I like. I wasn't as big a fan as like Glee and some of the later ones. Honestly, American Horror Story, which I'll talk more about later, is one of their other best shows. But yeah, there was that, and then The Shield came out right after that, and that is, in my opinion, one of the best top shows ever made. If you haven't seen it, it's great. The acting is amazing. It's the first show that Walt Dobbins ever did. The guy that was on, like, a bunch of stuff later. Oh, Sons of Anarchy showed up on. He was on Vice Principals. He's a great actor, and he's really good on that. And what makes that show great is it's all about a bunch of dirty, bad cops, and it just makes the whole cop format way more interesting. And it was created by this guy Shane Ryan, who went on to do Iron Man 3, among other things, and it's great. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's Shane Black. That's the guy that did Lethal 11. My bad. Shane went on to do some other good TV. I forget what. But the guy that created Sons of Anarchy, Kurt Sumner, actually wrote some of the Shield as well. The writing on that in particular is great. A lot of the shows I mentioned, honestly, as a film major and a screenplay writer, I've always gravitated to shows that are well written above everything else, and pretty much all of the shows I mentioned are, except for a few but not so great ones, which I'll mention. So yeah, The Shield is great, and then there was a show called Rescue Me on FX about an alcoholic firefighter played by Dennis Leary. That is a great, great show. It's half drama, half comedy, but amazingly well written. It's all written by Dennis Leary and this other guy whose name I forget, but they wrote like pretty much the entire show themselves. Very consistent and great, and it's funny and it really deals with addiction in a very realistic way. The guy tries to get sober and falls off a lot, which happens a lot in real life, and it's good, really good show. Right around that time, Judd Apatow put out the show Freaks and Geeks on Fox. I think it might have been on CBS or something, actually, or ABC, I forget. It only had one season, but it was amazing, and all the people on it went on to be huge, like James Plato, Seth Rogen, a lot of people you recognize, but it's really funny and really heartfelt and really just sweet and funny, and it should have gone on a lot longer, but watch the one season if you haven't. It's great. The same people went on to do another show that was on Fox called Undeclared, which was about kids in college. Freaks and Geeks was about freaks and geeks in high school, and Undeclared is also really funny and well written and good, and has some really cool guest stars in it, and Adam Sandler, Kyle Gass, all kinds of people, and it's great. We'll check it out. And right around this time was when HBO came back and started doing more great shows. Curb Your Enthusiasm, probably the best comedy ever made for television, starring Larry David. Also, the Larry Sanders Show, in my opinion, a great, great show, starring the late, great comedian Gary Shamblin. It was kind of a satire of late night talk shows, but it had all these celebrity guests on it playing themselves, which was sort of an ahead of its time idea, and really funny and well written, and Gary Shamblin was a genius, and I miss him a lot, and yep, great show. And then there was Deadwood, which was by far the best Western ever made on TV because it had tons of bad language in it. No, that's not why it was great, but it did add something to it. It was like a rated R normally Western, and it had Timothy Oliphant in it. It was great, and he went on to do Justified, which was another really good FX show. Bounty Hunter, really well written as well. The guy that wrote Deadwood was, I'm trying to remember his name, but he went on to do another HBO show called John from Cincinnati, They only had one season, but it was great, and I highly, highly recommend it. I can relate to it, especially because it's all about a family of surfers, and I knew a lot of surfers growing up here in Santa Cruz, and it was very interesting and surreal, oddly enough. It was about this guy that shows up in this town near San Diego, and he might be an alien, and it's how he like affects everybody in the family and stuff. And the writing and acting on it was amazing, and even though it never really got going like it should have, it dealt with some really, really cool ideas, and I would watch that season if you haven't. The Wire came out around this time on HBO as well, which was probably the best top show ever made. As much as I love The Shield, I would have to give it to The Wire as like the best. A lot of lists call it the best show ever in TV history, and it's definitely one of them. It's all about Baltimore and the policemen are trying to bust the drug dealers that are on the street, but the cool thing about it that makes it so good is it's all about, you've got the kids on the street dealing drugs, you've got the rich gangster guys above them selling. One of them is played by Idris Elba in the early part, and it's about like city council and the like cops in charge. Above the cops, like the chiefs, and like it talks about like the people in charge of the harbor police for one season, and it's like everything is connected with the police and the drug trade and the politicians. And it's incredible, and it definitely is one of the best shows ever made. And Burns and David Simon, the guy that wrote The Sopranos, made that. Incredible, we'll check it out. There were some good quirky dramas and comedies on TV around this time. The guy that created Wonder Falls did a show called Pushing Daisies that was on ABC. It was only on for a couple seasons, but it's really worth seeing if you haven't seen it, because it's about a guy that can basically bring dead people back to life for 1 minute, but then when he does that, someone else dies, but if he touches them again, then they die if he touches them again within a minute, so that the other person doesn't die. It's really odd. But one of the cool things about it was the way it was filmed and like the visual style. They did all these crazy like zooms and like just weird crazy ideas the way it was filmed, like using lots of CG, and it was great. And Brian Fuller is an amazing show creator, and all the shit he's done is awesome. So that's a good one to check out. Also, Veronica Mars came out on, I believe, the UPN and the CW, one of those, and that show's great. It's really quirky and different. Even though it's like a high school drama, it's still really good, like who done it, and it's the first show that twisted, what's her name? The girl that's on that newer show about going to heaven and dying. Yeah. Exactly. Twisted Bell. Thanks, producer. and she's really good on it. But side character is really good. It's about her dad is a detective, but she ends up being a detective out of high school. And it just goes in some really cool directions. And it's really hard to predict, and I liked it a lot. Even though it was kind of a high school drama, it's like miles away from like 90210. And then around the same time, maybe a little bit later, that's when Friday Night Lights came out. And that is definitely one of the best dramas ever made for TV as well. It was done by the guy that went on to do Parenthood and a couple other shows. And even though I can care less about football and like a small town that's into football, I fucking loved it. And I will admit, one of the reasons is it's one of the only shows to have a well-developed disabled character on it. Even though the actor that played him wasn't disabled, they still dealt with like being disabled really well on it, and that was cool. But yeah, Friday Night Lights is great and totally worth watching. Even though it's not my main type of thing. Then Prison Break came out on Fox. Not the greatest show ever, but very entertaining. Really good characters and pretty well written. And have a lot of good character actors in it, but went on to be on other shows. And it's worth seeing where it went. And right around this time was when Doctor Who came back on the BBC. I'm not the biggest fan of the old Doctor Who, even though it was very, it was really like real sci-fi, and that's why Doctor Who is cool. It's very hard sci-fi. It's more about like very sci-fi, like deep ideas that a lot of other shows don't touch, but I think it got a lot better and a lot higher budget, certainly, and a lot more entertaining when it came back in 2005, and they've gone through like 4 or 5 doctors since then, and I've liked all of it ever since then. My other show that came out right around then, which may be my favorite show of all time, if I had to pick one, is Lost, which was J.J. Abrams' next show. And I'm sure most people have seen it that are watching this, listening to this, but, it's great, and if you haven't watched it again, you owe it to yourself to do so. A lot of people did not like the end. I think the end is fucking amazing, and I mean, if you're into like spirituality and the idea of what humans are capable of and what they can choose to do, I mean, that people got so wrapped up in the island mysteries and all the like what this meant and what that meant, and I think half the point of the show was to let you decide for yourself what was going on with the plot, and the bigger ideas of the show was way more about what we choose to do in our lives, and like we could choose to do bad things or good things, or a mixture of both. Usually it is a mixture of both, and that's what Lost was really all about. And the writing was incredible. All of the writing on there, David Lindelof and Carlton Cuse created it, wrote the main episodes. Everything they've written since has been amazing. Yeah, I can't recommend Lost enough. But it was more of an influence, so it changed things. right around that time there was Fringe on Fox, which was a great sci-fi show that went, and horror to some degree, that had really cool monsters and science fiction, trans-dimensional ideas. Really good acting, really good writing. Was also by J.J. Abrams. It was the next show he did. And then that was right around the time that Heroes and the reboot of Battlestar Galactica came out. And I don't know, for some reason it seems like a lot of people don't give either of those shows a chance, and I can't recommend them highly enough. Battlestar Galactica, in my opinion, might be the best science fiction show ever in some ways. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Star Trek. I love the ideas that it talks about, but Battlestar Galactica came out right after 9/11. And so it was dealing with a lot of the issues of, like, how do you deal with terrorists and bad guys, what is allowable and what isn't. And then it got really into the idea of, like, well, it's about AI, because AIs are kind of the bad guys, but they're also some of the good guys, and they have, like, their own belief system, the God, and so it's sort of this whole argument about, like, spirituality and God, too. And it's a really good storyline, and just amazing actors in it, especially Emily James Olmos and Billy Steenburgen, I think, no, who played the president. She was great, whoever she was, and it's awesome, and the tech and the effects were great, and I don't know, if you love sci-fi and you haven't watched it, definitely check out the new Battlestar. It's worth checking out. They had a spin-off show that was okay. It only lasted a season, but yeah, it's great. And then Heroes was ahead of its time because it was all about the idea of superheroes before the Marvel movies made superheroes popular. And that's why it was great for the time, because it was amazingly well written and acted, and it dealt with superheroes in some really cool, trippy ways, and it didn't have any, like, Marvel or DC licensed superheroes, but that's almost what made it kind of cool in its own way. And so, yeah, those shows were great. There was a show called True Calling, T-R-U Calling, that I really liked. It only was on a couple seasons. Had that girl, Eliza Stone, that I mentioned earlier. She had the ability to touch a dead person and find out how they died. And then she would figure out how to solve the murder. And it actually had Zach Galifianakis in it, too, which is really funny, because he was really good in it. And it's worth checking out. It's a cool idea, if nothing else. FX started going off again around this time, with Justified, which I mentioned earlier, Damages, which was an amazing drama with Glenn Close and Rose Byrne. Really good show. And it also had Ted Danson in it in one of the seasons, and just a great drama thriller, really well written and made, and I would totally recommend that. And then Sons of Anarchy came out a little after that. Sons of Anarchy is, in my opinion, one of the best dramas ever made on TV. Kurt Sutter is an amazing writer. The whole show is great, the entire run. The acting in it in particular is amazing. Ron Perlman is amazing in it. Katie Siddall is amazing in it. And the guy that plays Jax, who was also in Pacific Rim, is amazing. Everybody in it is great. The acting, the writing, the directing. I can't say enough good things about Sons of Anarchy. It's about enlightenment, but that's sort of like, I feel like it kind of doesn't matter as much what a show is about. It's more about how well it's made. And those are the shows that have always been my favorite, the ones that are the best written and directed. And Sons of Anarchy is definitely up there with the best. On Fox, there was a spin-off a little before that called Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. It only lasted for 2 seasons, I think. But if you're a fan of the Terminator movies, it's definitely worth checking out. It's a lot better, in my opinion, than Terminator 3 or Genesis even, and yeah. I did like the new movie though, Dark Fate, that was cool. But then HBO came back again, and they had this run of shows that were all great. Carnival was about this weird carnival that went around, but it had like magic in it, and it was super fantasy driven, and circus freaks and fantasy, and can't go wrong with that. It only lasted 1 season though. Then there was Big Worm, which was awesome. Drama with Bill Paxton, played a Mormon guy that had 3 wives, and that was great. Had some amazing actors in it. Amazing character actors like Harry Dean Stanton and others. Really worth watching. There was a show called In Treatment on HBO. That was a really cool idea. I think it was based on a show that was actually made in Israel originally. And it starred Gabriel Byrne as a therapist. And they would have 5 episodes a week that were a half-hour long, and each episode would be about the different patients he was seeing each day of the week. But then it would also be about, like, him and his family, and the one episode would be him going to his therapist. So it was a really cool idea, done really well, and all the acting in it is amazing, and my mom was a therapist, and so I've always been interested in therapy and how it works, and it's a great drama and just really well made, good show. And around this time, Showtime did a couple cool shows. One was an anthology called Masters of Horror, and that is definitely worth watching because they took like a bunch of great horror directors like John Carpenter, Wes Craven, Joe Dante, Nick Gillis, Frank Darabont, guys like that, Todd Holland, and they all, Dario Argento, and they all did their own episodes, and they were all really cool and great. Hour long, very graphic, great show. And then I think also on Showtime, no, this show was on some weird network. I forget what it was. It's one of the only comedies I'm gonna mention, but it's called Puns Down, and it is so funny. And it had my boy Adam Scott on it before he was on Parks and Rec. And he is awesome in it. It's about a catering service, and it's hilarious. And as like a bunch of great comedic actors in it, like Jane Lynch and Martin Starr, and it's so funny and so good. Also on HBO around this time is another show I've been really watching, True Blood. A lot of people, again, don't give it a chance because it's like a soapy sex show about vampires, but the thing is, the vampire and the monster stuff in it is very hardcore and dark. It's like, it's not Twilight by any means, and I think that that's what a lot of people thought it was, kind of, if they didn't watch it. But the writing and acting is great. It was created, and a lot of it is written by Alan Ball, the same guy that did 6 Feet Under. That's really the only reason I even gave it a chance when it came out, but it's awesome, and we'll see it. Then HBO did kind of, not really the sequel to The Sopranos, but it had the same kind of vibe. But it was done by Scorsese, Boardwalk Empire. It was about like Al Capone and gangsters back then in the 30s, and that's an awesome show. Eastbound and Down came out on HBO, which is another comedy worth watching. Danny McBride created it, wrote it. Danny McBride's stuff is all great, and but that's probably my favorite show of his. Girls came out. I can't remember if it was HBO or Showtime, but I love that show. A lot of people give it shit, and but I think it's really good, really well written, really well acted, and I think it has some awesome guest actors on it too that do some really cool shit, and I stuck with it the whole way, and I think it's worth checking out. Masters of Sex, Lee Donovan, and The Affair were all dramas that came out on Showtime right around the same time, around 2010. They're all good. Lee Donovan's about a guy that fixes problems for celebrities. His dad's a gangster, played by John Voight. It's really well done and well made. Masters of Sex was all about the guys that wrote the first sexual test that everybody took in America. Masters and Johnson, I think, back in the day. That's great. And The Affair is a really well-made drama for the time. And then, over the last 10 years, there's just been some of the best shows. And I'm sure most of you have seen these, stuff like Mad Men, Louis C.K. show, Homeland on Showtime is great. Great terrorist show, action show, drama. Claire Danes is awesome in it. The Americans on FX is an awesome drama about Russian spies living in America in the 80s. A family, well, the parents are, the kids don't know it. But it's great, really twisty and turny, amazingly acted and written. And then you've got, Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad, which are pound for pound probably the two best shows ever made in a lot of ways. But as much as I love them both, and I actually am one of the few people that actually thought the end of Game of Thrones was actually pretty good. Maybe not amazing and not as good as it could have been, but still pretty damn good. But Better Call Saul, the spin-off of Game of Thrones, is amazing as well. Now I'm just gonna end the podcast by listing and talking briefly about the best horror and sci-fi and a few of the best drama comedy action shows of the last 10 years. Okay, so horror. There was a show on Netflix called The Killing, which is more of a murder mystery thriller, but it's amazing. Very dark, very well acted, awesome. The Walking Dead, the best zombie show, the only zombie show till the spin-offs, but an amazing, amazing show, which, it hasn't been quite as consistent in the last couple seasons, I would say. But the first 7 are insane and amazing. And even the last few have been worth watching, don't get me wrong. But the first 7, oh my god, they're just like amazing. And then Fear the Walking Dead is really good as well. That's a spin-off, worth checking out. Bates Motel, the show that was basically Psycho, was told very well done and very well acted. Can't say enough good things about that. Penny Dreadful is a great show that was on Showtime that is basically a postmodern take on the Universal monsters like Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman, and that's great. Dr. Jekyll, all that kind of stuff. Really, really good show. The Strain is one of the, probably, I mean, True Blood is amazing, but if you want to see a show about actually monstrous, frightening vampires, you gotta watch The Strain. It was created by Guillermo del Toro, who never does anything bad. Him and Colton Two's the guy that co-created Lost and the guy that co-wrote the book. It was a series of books as well that Guillermo and this other guy wrote together, and they all did the show and wrote it, and it's amazing and scary as fuck and amazingly well acted and just so good. Hannibal, also by Brian Fuller, obviously based on Hannibal Lecter and The Silence of the Lambs and Red Dragon books. I can't say enough good things about that show. It's amazing that it was on NBC because it is so violent and so dark and so gnarly, but so well acted and so good. Lawrence Fishburne's in it, Mads Mikkelsen, the guy that was the bad guy in Doctor Strange plays Hannibal. He's amazing in it, it's so good. Of course, Stranger Things, everybody's probably seen that, but how can you not love Stranger Things? Class between Spielberg and Stephen King. Thanks, Duffer Brothers, you guys rule. Come on my show, please. And American Horror Story has been great and consistent for most of its 8 seasons. The only ones I thought kind of faltered were seasons 4 and 5, which was the Circus one, Freak Show it was called, and Hotel. Those ones were kind of meh to me, but it totally got back on track, in my opinion, after that. So if you haven't seen all of American Horror Story, check it out. A lot of the writers on it are one of the guys from Angel and Firefly. All really good writers on that show, and some of the greatest actors ever have been on it. People like Kathy Bates and Jessica Lange, and like, it's awesome. Really cool show. And it's starting to reference itself in the newer seasons. If you haven't seen season 7, which is called Tolt, check it out. It's a total satire of Trump and Trump followers. And it's pretty great and worth checking out if you haven't. But the whole thing is good. Another great show that's had like 4 seasons, I think, was called Channel Zero, and it was really fucking creepy and scary, and each season is a different storyline, and they're all based on different creepypasta stories, which are internet horror stories that people have written over the years. And it's really scary and really good, and has a lot of cool character actors in it, and yeah. There's a bunch of them that came out based on movies, such as From Dusk Till Dawn. The series, that is awesome and great. If you like the movie, I can't recommend the show enough. Robert Rodriguez wrote and directed a lot of it himself. The acting and writing is great in it. It really expands the whole mythology of the movie a lot. Ash vs. Evil Dead. I'm sure you people listening have seen the Evil Dead movies. The show is amazing and just as good. I mean, it's Sam and Ivan Levy writing and directing it. How can it not be? And Bruce Campbell, so there you go. Awesome show. The Exorcist, which only had 2 seasons and got canceled too quickly, is amazing. And really a sequel to the movie in some ways. And really, really scary and fucked up and sexually fucked up. And goes into a lot of dark places I wouldn't have expected a show on Fox to go into. The Exorcist was great. It just didn't last long enough. The Haunted on Netflix, they've had 2 seasons, both great. The first one was called The Haunting of Hill House, and that's based on the old novel by Shirley Jackson, and The Haunted, and that was great. Really scary and jumpy in a lot of places. The new season is called The Haunting of Bly Manor. That's good too. It's a little less jumpy, but just as disturbing and well made and good. Mindhunter is a great show on Netflix about the FBI hunting serial killers back in the 70s. And they even have an episode about a guy that used to kill people here in Santa Cruz. And they even have one of the bars that's in Santa Cruz in the show. It's interesting. But Julie Room, he used to hang out there with cops a lot. And that show's really, really well made and good and creepy. Creepshow has just been made into a series on Shudder. And it's great. Also, a lot of the episodes written. It's kind of done by the guy Glenn Nicotero, who directs a lot of The Walking Dead and was one of the KMB effects guys for years. He produces and writes and directs it, as does John Harrison, the guy I mentioned earlier that did the music for Creepshow. He writes a lot of it, directs a lot of it, and it's great. Wanted Tea is a really cool show on Netflix that is based on an amazing comic written by Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, which is really hard to describe, but really cool. And then the last one of the show I want to mention is called Servant, and it's by M. Night Shyamalan, and it's on the Apple Network as well, and it's amazingly creepy. It's about a creepy baby and a creepy babysitter, and that's all I'm gonna say. Whoa, I didn't even notice that it was getting dark as I was talking. Sorry about that. You can't see my beautiful face. But now you can again. Anyway, I'm almost done anyway. But science fiction shows and fantasy, superhero type shows worth checking out. Over the last while, there's obviously Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was also done by Joss Whedon. So that the sequel to the first Avengers movie, and talks about what happened to S.H.I.E.L.D., and surprise, surprise, Phil Coulson is not dead, he's still alive, and actually a really great show, really well written, goes into some really cool directions. The Ghost Rider shows up on one season, and the Inhumans, and a bunch of other Marvel characters that most people don't know about are on it, and it's great. It's a really cool side part of the Marvel universe. As are the first Netflix Marvel shows, Daredevil being the best by far, but Luke Cage is great, and the first season of Jessica Jones is great. Kind of went downhill after that, and Iron Fist, that's okay. But Daredevil, at least, you should definitely watch. If you haven't, this Daredevil's an awesome character, and the Punisher show is pretty good too. Forgot about that one. And, there's The Gifted, which was an X-Men show on Fox. A couple of years back. It only had 2 seasons, though. It would have been great, I think, if they had kept going. But the 2 seasons they did were really cool, and had a lot of the X-Men characters that were in the movies, and let's see, and then you got like the DC shows. There is Runaways, which was based on a Marvel property about a bunch of kids that have superpowers. That's on Prime, and it's actually pretty good. Excuse me, Hulu, and that's actually pretty good. They did a good job of getting good actors, and it was well written, and it was cool. It was actually based on a really cool comic that Joss Whedon actually wrote a bunch of as well. But he didn't have anything to do with the show, oddly enough. But the DC shows, there's been a ton of them. Arrow was the first one. I think Gotham is way better than Arrow. And The Flash is also way better than Arrow. Gotham is better because it was on Fox, not the CW, but, even The Flash being on CW, it is rather hokey. It doesn't have, like, the best acting ever, but it's very fun, and it's very true to the comic, and it has a lot of cool bad guys from The Flash's gallery of roads in the show that show up, and out of all those CW shows, The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow are the 2 best, I would say. I hear Doom Patrol was worth checking out. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm gonna. And then There's also a show called Pennyworth that just came out on Emmets, which is all about Alfred Pennyworth, Batman's, But everybody knows Alfred. But, yeah, Gotham is actually amazing, and it's all about Bruce Wayne when he's a kid, and about the bad guys in Gotham before he becomes Batman, but it's really, really well done and entertaining, and if you like Batman, definitely check out Gotham and Pennyworth. Pennyworth only had one season, but it's coming back. Supposedly, if this COVID thing ever gets ironed out. And then there was a show on Fox called Lucifer that's based on a comic about the devil coming to Earth. And it's actually really entertaining. I've only seen some of it, but the comic is great. The show seems really amusing and well written, and like it's gonna go in some funny places. Remember was Preacher, which was an amazing comic written by Garth Ennis that Seth Rogen and Evan Riley created for AMC. It only had 4 seasons, and it only covered like the first third of the comic. But what they did was great and really well done, and one of the more entertaining shows on TV, and it's based on such a great indie comic. If you haven't read the comic, I can't recommend it highly enough. Same goes for the show The Boys, which is on Prime and just finished its 2nd season. Also based on an indie comic. It's about if superheroes were kind of bad and they needed to be policed. And it's about this group of people that police them, and it's fucking dark and violent and a really, really interesting take on the superhero genre, and one of the best shows on TV, I think. Really, really great show. And the comic as well, one of my favorite comics ever written. And then also there was Watchmen. That was written by David Lindelof, the guy that did Lost. It only had 1 season. It's a self-contained story, and it was so amazingly timed because it was all about race relations in America, and it's also a sequel to the Watchmen movie and comic, and you should definitely read the comic Watchmen if you haven't. The only comic book to make the list of Time Magazine's best 100 American novels ever written, and such a great comic, and the movie is very close to the comic, and it's a lot of people didn't really get the movie because it's so dark and weird, but if you know the comic, the movie's actually great and really well made, and one of Zack Snyder's best movies in my opinion. But the show, I can't say enough good things about. Regina King is the main actress in it, and Jeremy Irons is in it, and so good, so cool, and such a good sci-fi fantasy show mixed with amazing ideas about America and race relations, and yeah, it's great. Lovecraft Country as well. Amazing show, really cool. One of the only shows with black people in a horror show, horror movie ever made, and written and directed by black people too, which is really cool, and I really enjoyed that a lot. It deals with race and gender and all kinds of stuff. And it has a lot of cool Lovecraft monsters in it. Although there's never really been a real Lovecraft show made, and I don't know why not. Someone needs to do it. H.P. Lovecraft is incredible. The show Sense8, which was written and directed by the Wachowskis, so cool. It's like the highest budget Netflix show that there is, and it was co-written by them and J. Michael Straczynski, who's a comic book writer. He's also the guy that made the sci-fi show Babylon 5 back in the early 90s, late 80s. Another great sci-fi show, by the way. But yeah, that show's really cool. It's all about these 8 people that are psychically connected, and they're all like different types of people, straight, gay, transgendered, and different races, and it's so good, so good. I love that show. It got canceled much too early. They had 5 seasons of storyline written out, and it got canceled after the second, but they were able to make a movie to end it, made for Netflix at least, so that's good. But yeah, that show was amazing, and one of the best superhero shows ever made, which is sort of like a David Lynch take on superhero shows, was on FX for 3 seasons, I believe, called Legion, and it's based on a character that's in the X-Men universe, which is actually Charles Xavier's son, who was one of the most powerful mutants on the planet. He can like alter reality just by thinking about it, but he's also crazy. So it's really trippy and weird, and it's written and directed by this guy Noah Hawley, who also wrote and created the show Fargo with the Coen brothers, which is also fucking amazing. Everything this guy Noah Hawley does is awesome. Fargo is great. Check out both of those shows. Legion is so psychedelic and weird and crazy and great, and I mean, it's like David Lynch and a superhero show on acid all mixed together. How can you not like that? There's a great sci-fi kind of time travel show that's animated, kind of like the movie A Stanley Dozier. It's in the same style as that, where they draw over real filming, called Undone, that's really good on Prime, about a little living to talk to her dead dad, who's also played by what's his name from Bob Odenkirk from Better Call Saul is in it, and it's great, really good. Only like 8 episodes, but great. And then there's the Don't Twistle reboot. Don't Twistle Age of Renaissance on Netflix. Amazing show. As is a series of unfortunate events, which is based on the Lemon Snicket books. A lot better than the movie, I thought. More true to the books, and Neil Patrick Harris is hilarious as Count Olaf in it, and the kids are really cool show. I like that a lot. So now I'm just going to list a few dramas. The Leftovers on HBO. One of the best dramas ever made. Also written by David Lindelof. The acting on that show is just mind-bending. Jesus. All 3 seasons are great on that show. Mr. Robot on USA. One of the darkest, weirdest shows I've ever seen. All about technology and corporations taking over, conspiracies, drug use, reality bending, all mixed together, and stars Rami Malek, the guy that was in the Queen movie about Freddie Mercury, and he produced it, and he's amazing in it. All the acting in it is great. Atlanta, the comedy drama on FX that is written by, directed, and starring Donald Glover, one of the most talented guys on the planet. Jesus. That show is so good and goes in a whole lot of surprising directions, and can't say enough good shit about that. The show Goliath that's on Prime, starring Billy Bob as a lawyer, an alcoholic lawyer, is really cool and good. One of the better new dramas, the show For All Mankind, which is all about the space race on the Apple Network. I like that a lot, but it's a fictional retelling of it. It starts off with the idea of the Russians landing on the moon first, and how that would affect NASA. That's really cool. I gotta stop just a bit. And the new Jack Ryan show on Amazon, starring John Krasinski, I liked a lot. It's a lot better than the movies. And Cobra Kai, which is the Karate Kid show, which is a sequel, and it's mainly about Johnny, the main Cobra Kai bad guy, when he's grown up, but it also has the main kid, Daniel, in it as well, and it's about them as rivals, as adults, and that show is surprisingly good and entertaining. The second season was a little disappointing compared to the first, but it was still good. And then the last show I just want to mention is the only kid show I'm going to mention. If you haven't watched Adventure Time, do yourself a favor and watch the whole damn thing. It gets amazing by the 4th or 5th season. It has almost 10, I believe, but it is by far, in the last 6 seasons especially, one of the most psychedelic shows ever made. And the fact that it's aimed at kids as well, just what the fuck, how is that real? But it is. I don't know how they pulled it off, but they did, and it's amazing. Lastly, just 2 documentary shows that were both on AMC. One is James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction. It's a 6-episode show all about the history of science fiction movies. Tons of people like Spielberg and Lucas are on it, plus tons of other people. Just a documentary about sci-fi movies. And then Eli Roth's History of Horror, which is also on AMC. Now in its 2nd season, amazing show where they talk about different types of horror movies every episode, and I can't say enough good things about that. It's awesome. And there's also a documentary movie that's all about 80s horror movies called Summoning the Darkness, which is also incredible. It's online, and it's 4 hours long, and it's awesome. Alright, I'm getting tired, and that was a good history of TV, I think. So, gonna cut it. I'll see you guys next time. And, I hope you check all these movies out, and also, please subscribe to my YouTube, subscribe to my podcast, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and help me get up higher on the list of disabled and maybe other types of podcasts too. And follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all of that. Alright guys, have a good one. Bye.